Hey everybody, it's Brendon Burchard, covering some of the topics that you all have been asking for. You know, you've all been asking for an approach to looking at habits through the lens of both abundance, so wealth, career, business, but also the internal stuff of confidence and fulfillment. And that's what this is about. It's about how do you use these habits to live abundantly? How do you use these habits to feel fulfilled and your best self? And I'll share with you some of the insights that we learned from the world's largest and most comprehensive high-performance research that's ever been done, with data points from over 190 countries, digging down deep into the most successful people in the world and how they think, how they manage their day, how they treat other people, how they influence others, and how they get stuff done. Today we're going to talk about the myths and the mindsets that might be holding you back from having a different quality of life. And that goes for those of you who are on this right now who are already advanced. Because what we found with high performers worldwide is sometimes the way they were thinking looked differently or was more advanced than the general public. In other areas, not so much. It was just that they made common sense, common practice. So we'll be talking about how do you understand which habits you should focus on in each of these different areas, and then how do you really apply it so it sticks and so that you rise to the next level a little easier. Because look, maybe your last journey that got you to where you are today was really hard. You know, if you look at your past so far, it's been, all over the place and you've had a lot of crappy days, and maybe the relationships you've had so far weren't as vibrant and fulfilling as you wanted. Maybe your career or your goals seemed too far out of reach. Or if you reached them, you had to do it by, just bluster and burn out. We want to get you back to a state of harmony or equilibrium in which you really feel like you're at your best, like you are what we call high performing. You feel like not only are you more, engaged in the moment and capable of performing well, but you also feel like satisfied and fulfilled as you're striving. We're gonna bust a lot of myths today, about the hustle and the grind and being lonely at the top and all this other stuff that's become very, great fodder for social media, but just doesn't have any truth in what we see from the research. I mean, there's a lot of podcasters or Instagrammers or people who are posting ideas about, how hard you have to work and kind of work yourself into the ground. The good news about high performers is that's not their reality. Data worldwide confirms that high performers, they're happy. They're striving satisfied. Maybe they're not settling, but they're certainly not dissatisfied with where they're at. They still have an extremely positive range of emotions and positive relationships, meaning they didn't burn themselves out, they didn't wreck their relationships, they didn't obsessively focus on something so much that it took away from their health or from their families. I mean, unbelievable data we'll share with you here that will be exciting for you, and I promise will really engage you. For those who have supported the book, again, a big shout out. You'll get so many more tools and resources in the book, but my job today is to not just recite what this book is about to you. I'll make sure that I talk about these topics that you've been asking about, and that's, again, sort of abundance and confidence and looking through the lens of that. So I welcome everybody here. You've already supported me, so this is me just saying thank you and teaching based on what you've already been asking us about business and career, confidence, fulfillment, handling other relationships, chasing and pursuing your dream and staying after it, and not apologizing when you have ambitions that might be higher than other people around you. And that's a big theme that you guys have been asking about too. And so with all that, I've got a curriculum in mind. First, I want to baseline everybody into a high performance conversation to get your mind into both the book and into your life, thinking about how are you performing already? Like how's it going in your relationships, in your health, in your career? Are you as far along as you wanted to be? Do you feel like that incredible sense of vibrancy and joy at what you're doing, even when it's hard, even if it's a struggle, because that happens too? How do you stay on rhythm, getting stuff done, and not alienate the humans around you when you're tired, exhausted, or frustrated? We'll talk about all of that too. Now, this might sound like, gosh, we got a lot to talk about. I'm like, we do. The good news is this book creates a framework in which it's it's possible for me to teach a concept and then talk to you about your career and your health and your wealth in that one area. And it's also a beauty of this experience we get to have here today. Make sure you take this time to really think about your life. This could be just an informational presentation for you, or it could be transformational. I always tell people, when you're taking notes, either you're just writing down what you're hearing and you're excited about it, or you're writing your manifesto. You're writing your goals and your dreams and that next level stuff for you. And that's important. So look at it this way. This is a great time of the year to check in and see how you're feeling about the major areas of your life, to really score yourself. Throughout this podcast today, I'll be asking you to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1, you suck at that area right now, if you're honest. And 10, you're crushing it. You're great. What's number 11 for you? We'll talk about all of this here as well. I'm going to go into some of the insights about the book so that we're all on the same page, because I know some of you haven't got it yet. You ordered it, maybe it didn't ship to you yet through Amazon or wherever you got it. So let me give you a high-level overview of the main habits. And when I talk about each of the habits, then we'll jump down into other parts of your life, okay? So this book is literally what the subtitle says, How Extraordinary People Become That Way. And why is it different? And why is what we're talking about different here today? Because this is one of the first books ever written in the high-performance realm that was really grounded in science, really grounded in analysis, really grounded not just in, the author's perspective, because there's a lot in this book I learned, I didn't know. And there's a lot of things that I've taught in the past that were, maybe they weren't wrong, but they weren't as important as some of the other things that we found in this book. And like I said earlier, some of the things in this book, common sense, but not common practice. But I got data points, over 2 million data points from 190 countries. We did more diligence and discipline in finding what correlated to people's sense of their long-term success than anyone's ever done before. And then it wasn't just data and surveys, it was me jumping into interviews with the people who scored the highest. And these are people who are already in the top 15%, maybe in their category, where that's their career or their industry or their age range or their income level. Then I'd interview the top 15% of the top 15%. And I wasn't doing it for entertainment style, like what you hear, like as an example in podcasts, where they're like, tell me about your childhood and how did you find this passion? And I mean, those are good, but these were structured academic sort of interviews. I did ethnographic research, and we did the deep dive into these people's lives to understand what they were really doing. I was asking habits, as you'll see in this book, when you see the list of questions we gave them, it was pretty intense. These interviews were very practical, and that's what makes this book, I really think, special. It's incredibly well researched, and I don't just say that because, hey, look at me. I used a research team. Like, we went way deep on this stuff. And then I also interviewed the folks. And then I've had the blessing now over the last 10 years of coaching some of the most extraordinary people in the world, all to bring these insights to everybody. So I hope that grounds you in what we'll be talking about here, because the search has always been, which habits lead to dramatic improvement and proven long-term success? And when we say proven long-term success, we mean that these people could document, it was an observable measure, whether that was by income or years of success, or even if it was their own self-ascribed levels of success over a year, then validated by a 360 performance assessment. I mean, we went to the wall in the overall research. And when I say the research, I want to be really clear. It's not like we did one survey one time, okay? We did, some analysis so that we could create methodology reports and some validated assessments where we cared about construct validity and all the academic stuff. But then I've been researching and interviewing and conducting assessments with my audience for over a decade now. So it's really given us some great insights. And I want to share right off the bat with what we're talking about here today. When we talk about high performance, we mean something specifically. We mean succeeding beyond standard norms consistently over the long term. This means whatever the measure of success usually is, let's say the measure of success is 100, okay? A high performer would be scoring higher than that 100, and they have been consistently scoring higher than that 100, whatever that 100 means, long term. And our long term was we were looking at least 3 to 5 years of sustained performance in a category. And then for many people we interviewed, I mean, we're talking decades at the top of their game. So this was really fascinating research. And I just want to get into what it feels like for you, though, because I don't want it to feel like, oh, Brendon's just going to talk about academic stuff the whole time. Here's what it feels like. And this is important for you to write these 3 things down. Okay? If you haven't written anything down yet, that's okay. Now begin. You need 3 things to feel like you're going to consistently be at your best so that you can perform. Okay? We did keyword analyses on all of our subjects, and we asked them, you know, if you could describe how you feel when you are high performing in any given situation. For some people, that meant, you know, performing well on the field. Other people, doing well on a test, because high performance is correlated with GPA and academic performance too. And then, okay, maybe it's in their craft of what they're doing as an artist or a business person. But we need these 3 things. Number 1, full engagement. And you've heard this huge conversation worldwide about mindfulness. All it's saying is get here. Get in this moment. Put your body and your mind, whoop, like right here, like bam, get present. And you've got to be able to do that consistently over the long term if you really want to succeed. And I know you already know that, but how many times, you know, have you found yourself just going through the motions? You know, you just kind of get up, you go over, you slam down that coffee or that morning shake, and then you're off to the day. But then you realize it might be 3, 4 o'clock, and you haven't felt yourself all day. You know what I mean? You haven't felt your heart. You haven't noticed your breath. You haven't really observed your own attitude and your own thoughts. You've been sort of oblivious to other people because you're typing along, they come in and express a need, and you found yourself answering something, but they left the room and you don't even remember what you just talked about with them. You ever been there? So maybe you can score yourself. Let's be honest. If I parachuted into your life here and I followed you around the last 30 days and I said, how present are you being? 1, you were not present. You were checked out, going through the motions. 10, man, you were just like, whew, aware. I mean, you had like that Dalai Lama awareness thing going on. You were just like vibrant and in the moment. You were just like right there, and people could feel it. Where were you in the last 30 days? And let me share my journey with you too. You know, I would say for me, I was at like a level 6. And that's not good. That's not good at all. You know, I would say in general, most of the time in my life, I feel like I'm a good 8 or 9, like solid. But I was at a level 6 this last 30 days because I traveled so much, and that threw me out of my rhythms a little bit. We had extreme performance pressures to deliver on the book, to deliver on other promotions, to speak on these big stages, to deliver consulting and some curriculum and tools to other of our clients. I mean, it was on. So I hope that as I talk through this with you today, there's not a sense of like, I figured everything out. You and me, we're gonna work on these high performance habits our entire life. When I talk about high performance habits, it's very different than other books about, you know, habit. Most books about habit are about just how do you form one so that it becomes unconscious and you don't have to think about it again. And I'm like, that's not the kind of habit that makes you succeed over the long term, ever. It's not unconscious competence that keeps somebody winning over and over and over. It's mastery. And mastery requires us to fully engage, and it requires us to be deliberate about our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, how we're doing our work. And so these practices we're gonna have to work at for life. And engagement is one of them. We all have our ups and downs of engagement throughout the day. Our goal is to get you to higher levels of those. And let me just give you a simple tool right off the bat. You need to set up some kind of trigger or triggers throughout the day that bring you back to presence in your work and in your relationships. I don't know what they are for you, but a trigger is when something happens, you teach yourself to do something else, right? It's like a cue happens, you trigger yourself. That's like the basics of like habit development. And what we're trying to get you to do is if A happens, then you do B to make you more present. Let me give you simple examples of mine. When I'm at home, and let's say I'm working, and family, team, somebody comes into a room. one of my ways to get present with people is when I'm sitting down and somebody walks in and they want to talk, like if somebody comes into my office as an example at my house or here, one of the things I try to train myself to do is if somebody wants to talk, I stand up out of my chair and I engage them. Because if I'm sitting down, I might be like, yeah, and I don't really see them. So as soon as someone, hey, Brendon, I try to get up, yes. And it's just a simple thing, right? Same thing with presence for me on my phone. If you looked on my alarms, there's all these little labels that go off throughout the day. Same thing on my computer. Throughout the day, these little alarms are going off that are helping me kind of get back into the moment. You know, for myself personally, I meditate every day, and sometimes it's twice a day. In general, it's at least one meditation per day, 20 minutes. If you want to know how I do that to stay present and more engaged and fulfilled throughout the day, I have a video on YouTube you can check out called The Release Meditation Technique, RMT. We've taught RMT to over 2 million people now, have watched that video. I mean, I don't know how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of downloads by now of the tools or the sheets for those. And just you Google Release Meditation Technique and my name and watch that. But it's a practice that's conditioning presence for me. And we found a lot of high performers do meditate. Here's the interesting thing though. We did not find that one specific thing correlated with their long-term performance more important than the other things that are in this book. Meaning maybe meditation was a part of them generating energy, which we'll talk about, but it wasn't the only thing that gave them the performance edge. Does that help? Because I think what's happened in personal development, especially today with like hackers, they're like, do this one thing and that one thing will make all the difference forever. And I'm like, no, I know a lot of people who meditate who are jerks. I know a lot of people who meditate, they're very calm, but they couldn't be productive out of a paper bag, okay? So it's never just one thing. What we found is it's a set of deliberate practices and habits that are all in the book that will help you get there, okay? So trust that I'm not giving one silver bullet here. We're doing a comprehensive training and approach to this conversation. I need you to be more fully engaged in your work, more fully engaged in your relationships, more fully engaged in your health. Because you know what people do is they disengage. And when you disengage from your relationships, you're out of presence. You're out of that finding of fulfillment. Because a lot of people ask, Brendon, how do I find fulfillment? And maybe they see something that I'm doing online or something someone else is doing in their world and they say, oh, they must be so much more fulfilled than me because they're doing X, Y, and Z. And that's a big mistake. Don't make that. You know, I remember when I was, coming up in the industry, I'd see some, some famous CEO and I'd see him, traveling in luxury. Or I would see somebody, they had a big team or look at their big fancy house. And my mindset would be wrong. And it would be thinking, oh, well, they must be so much more fulfilled than me because they have those things. But more things aren't going to make you more fully engaged. And more things aren't going to make you more fulfilled. What will bring high performance, but that sense of engagement and fulfillment in life is this. How are you engaging the moment, the situations, the persons around you, and your craft? Those things are what really are mattering. Like, how are you engaging what you do have? I know people who say all the time at the top levels, who aren't high performing, right? They might have financial success, but they're not high performing in their life. Does that make sense? Maybe they're, achieving a lot, but they're burning themselves out and they wreck their relationships. And I mean, who wants that life? But maybe they got some money. And I hear the ones who are not performing well, but maybe they got lucky, or maybe they did work really, really hard, but they blew up the rest of their life to do that. They'll often say things like, man, Brendon, I wish I could go back to a time when it was so much easier. I got all these things, a nicer house and higher thread count and fancier shampoo and whatever else they buy, I don't know. And they'll say, I got all these things, but I'm not happy. And their lack of fulfillment isn't going to be fulfilled by filling up their bank account a little bit more. It's just not where it's going to come from. Your next level of fulfillment and high performance is going to come from training yourself to more fully engage in the moment. Let me say it again. your next level of fulfillment in life, literally life fulfillment, satisfaction, and high performance are both correlated, and we can measure life satisfaction scale, high performance indicator scale. Both those are strongly correlated with how you are deciding to engage in the moment. Where there's engagement and presence there really matters. If we can up those things, then the research in my interviews suggest that you'll be more fulfilled and you'll be higher performing. So score yourself. How are you really engaging the day? Are you conscious? Are you deliberate? Are you aware? Are you present? Or are you just going through the motions, man? And if you're just going through the motions, don't make the mistake I made when I was a young person. Okay, I'm still young. Don't make the mistake I remember making in my 20s so often, in that I would say, well, I'm not engaged because the work sucks. This job sucks. You know, I'm not engaged here because I don't like that coworker. And you cannot blame your level of engagement on anybody else. You control your level of engagement in life. You cannot blame anybody else. And as soon as you do that, you're tearing yourself from your personal power, and you're guaranteeing that you're not going to fill your dream. Because what you'll end up doing is you'll just, it's almost like blade by blade of excuses and blame. You're knocking down, your own potential. And so be very careful to ever blame engagement on other people or anything else, right? Look, I'm here with you, and I hope you feel my presence right here with you. It's been a crazy, 72 hours for us. We've been really going to serve you guys and make this possible. I mean, we've been going. I can't walk in the studio today and be a high-performing trainer if I walk into you and I say, oh, well, I guess I'm just going to be awful today because I haven't really, slept as much as usual or ate as much or worked out. You can't do that. I can't blame my engagement on last night or the day before. Because in the moments that you are called to serve, you either choose that you are going to be deliberate and rise to that occasion, or you're going to blame something. So rise, my friends. Measure your engagement. Second big thing, and I promise I won't go this long on all of them, okay? The second big one, though, is joy. Joy. If you're not as wealthy as you wanted to be, you're probably not as joyful on the wealth journey as you should be. I was amazed by this. The level of happiness that high performers have, that's a big life outcome in the measures of psychology, right? Whether or not people are happy. And there's lots of scales that have been conducted and used over the years to determine that, and we leveraged a lot of that to make sure that we validated our overall construct here. It was amazing to see how happy high performers are worldwide. Now, you think, well, no doubt, Brendon, they're performing well. Of course they'd be happy. Yeah, but one thing was really interesting. We think often the cart before the horse. We say, oh, well, they became happy because they're high performing. But in my interviews, I often found that when somebody switched their attitude and became happy, in other words, generated happiness, then they started performing higher. It's like they're not happy just because they're wealthy. They got happy and started feeling wealthier in all areas of their lives, right? The abundance came into their life. It's not like abundance came in, thank God, now I'm happy. It was reverse order. It was, they chose positive emotions over and over and over and over and over, meaning they chose their attitude, they chose to be an optimist, they chose to be happy, and by choosing happiness in their life, it became easier to perform even the mundane tasks that you and I wouldn't like and maybe we complain about a little bit. Meaning, coming from that place of a deep sense of gratitude, happiness, or joy, experiencing lots of joy, not because necessarily something gave you joy, but you brought the joy, that helps you get better. If you're ever around me, it's pretty rare that I complain. I'll be very factual about what I'm doing, how's it going? I'm like, it's bananas crazy, but I won't complain about it because I feel joyful in the opportunity to serve. I think that if you have the opportunity to serve, you don't complain about the work required to do it. it's like you honor that part, that struggle, that difficulty to serve, but more than just like begrudging it, bring the joy. Look, there is a reason why worldwide that people understand the concept of whistle while you work. As soon as you say it, people go, oh, I know what that means. And it's not just because of Walt Disney, though he did a pretty good job on that one, right? It's because we know we should be happy engaging our day and not waiting for some delivery day when we finally become happy. If that sounds too common sense for you, okay, if I jumped into your life in the last 6 months and I looked at how much happiness you brought to the day, not took from it, you brought. I don't mean like, oh, well, Brendon, you could follow me around. My children brought me so much joy. I'm like, okay, that's one level, right? That's joy that the situations of the world can give you. But you know what? There's been a lot of turmoil in the world. I know we have people, some friends watching this right now, impacted, catastrophically by Hurricane Irma, Harvey, by what's going on right now as I'm filming this, by earthquakes around the world, by other major storms, by political turmoil, by, real difficulties of life. And I know that hardship because I grew up with some very difficult times, and I have supported people in maybe the most difficult times of their life, including death, by doing hospice work. I've seen a lot. And having coached for a decade, you can imagine, I talk about people's problems all day. I'm pretty familiar with people, how they handle them. And the person who can will themselves to choose happiness even amid that and bring it into the situations. About 3 blocks from right behind your camera is a street here in Portland, Oregon. It's a tough place. And they have a couple soup kitchens on the line there. And if you ever go volunteer in your local city, I hope you'll volunteer in your community and make that a big part of your life. But if you ever go volunteer at let's say a soup kitchen, it's so obvious when you see a good volunteer. It's not that they know where everything is. It's that they are happily doing the work that most people would see you're like, well, man, the guy's sweeping the floor volunteering. And you think, I'm glad I didn't get that task, right? You could think that. But the guy be whistling and having a good time and just so happy to be helping out. The people who are happy to be helping out are bringing joy into the situations of life. That's making them feel more happy, more engaged, and they perform better. Because you know what sucks? When you're just doing the grind and it's 10 p.m. at night and you hate the process. You know what I'm talking about? When it's 10 o'clock and you know you need to stay up till 2 in the morning and it's a grind and you identify it as I just got to hustle and I just got to grind right now. Guess what? That 10 p.m. till that 2 a.m., you know what that's going to feel like? It's going to hurt. That's what it's going to feel like. I know. I was there last night at 10 p.m. going, I got to go to at least 2 a.m. minimum. How am I going to approach this next block of time? Am I going to be like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this again? And we're like, I'm going to grind it out. No, I'm like, okay, I'm going to bring some joy to this process, because if I can put some positive emotion on this, and guess what? 11, noon, 1, 2, let's rock. Okay, yes, sir. 11, midnight, 1, 2, let's rock. But I'm enjoying it. I'm having it. Like, if you actually saw me work, you're like, he must be on something. Why is he like that? And it's not caffeine. Trust me, ask my team. It's not. I have no caffeine in front of me right now. Sometimes I do, but nothing right now, because I'm very susceptible to that. Some of you guys are too. It's like if my arm got cut off and you gave me an Advil, it'd grow back. It's like I'm very susceptible to things that I put in my body because I'm pretty clean in general. So I'll tell you, it's like it's not that gets me through, and what gets me through is joy. Write it down. I really mean this. Write it down on your journal. What gets me through is joy. What gets me through is joy. That attitude didn't just change my life. I found it over and over and over again in the top 15% of the top 15%. They engaged the work even when it wasn't sexy, because of the attitude they brought to it. And you know this, again, I know it's common sense but not common practice, but Viktor Frankl talked about it. The last of our human freedoms is the ability to choose one's own attitude. Next up, confidence. You got to start approaching your work with confidence. Same thing, listen to this. You think, and this might be your big stumbling block, so please listen. You think just as soon as you get more success, just as soon as you get more accolades, respect, support, money, experience, competence, a better community of people around you, then you will now have earned the right and the blessing to be more confident. Is it true? People wait for something to give them happiness. They also wait for something to give them confidence. And that was a stunner. Confidence was so strongly intertwined in the conversations between the 6 habits that we'll go through. It stunned me. Even though I'd have a program called the Confidence Course, I still didn't know until we did this data to understand how important that is for people. So, but not to have it, to generate it. Your next level of performance at what you're doing does not only need to come from competence and community, which usually that's where people take it from, right? I get better at what I'm doing, so the more experience I have, the more easy it is for me to do, the more confident it is, right? Like for me, I've done these live casts so many times, I know I can do this, right? That happens from experience. You might have the same thing in your genre or your career or your life. You've done it so many times, no problem, right? But there's an unconscious competence to that because you've done it so many times. But then there is a willed confidence that you're just saying, you know what? I'm going to do this confidently. Write it down, my friend. Just literally write down the words. I'm going to do this confidently. Just choose that. See, most people, they start bumbling into something and then they want it to give them confidence. When I first started doing videos or books or training or on the big stages, I was seen in that movie that we got, like my development was a little slow. Over my first couple years, I don't think I performed that much better. And it was because I kept waiting for something like some kind of like size of a stage or I don't know what I was waiting for to be more of a confident speaker. And then I was talking with a person who's very high performing and not even in my industry, but he was telling me about how he just decided to start owning his role in his business. He was the CEO of his business. He said, one day, Brendon, when I walked in the door, I don't know what it was for me, but I walked into the door, Brendon, and I knew I owned that space. You know, I was leasing it. He said, I didn't really own it because I owned the space I was in. And I realized these are my employees. This is my space. And he said, I just stepped in full to the ownership role of who I was. And he goes, instantly I became a better leader because I owned it now. I was confident that that's who I was and what I did. Nothing happened for him. No bigger paycheck, no more team, not any smarter, well maybe smarter by choosing a different disposition, right? I think a lot of intelligence is choosing the right disposition for how we need to serve. And he said, I just owned it. Well, I know it might be simple to think about, but let's ask about maybe are you in a relationship right now? Maybe you're married or you have a significant other, or maybe it's just, if you think about a relationship you have with a family member, have you fully stepped into owning that role yet? Like with confidence? You know, I was working with a friend right now and he's having some challenge with his relationship with his wife. And I was over visiting with them and I saw even the way he brought things up and the conversations that we were having, he was just so demasculated, you know? Is that a word? It sounds like one. Emasculated? Not demasculated. It sounds better when it's demasculated, like it got taken away. They should change that word. Let's just change that word. So he was emasculated. He was a confident guy, but he wasn't being confident in his ability to love his wife. That make sense? I've worked with Olympic level athletes And if they don't bring the confidence on the field, they're going to get smashed. And it wasn't like they needed 10 more training sessions. It's the mindset that we're walking into things. So I know I'm going a little bit long on these particular 3 things, but I do this at High Performance Academy. I do this in my training programs, because if we're not, you and me, on the same page here about this, it's going to be hard to make you another level of success for yourself, right? Because you can't feel like you're going to be self-made unless you finally say, I'm going to own this moment. I'm going to bring some joy here, and I'm going to do this confident. Maybe it's time for you to be more confident in the relationships and the roles that you play in your life, to really own them. If you're going to be a good wife, own that and be a great wife. Like, know that as part of my identity. Feel that, you know? If you're going to be a great leader with your team, own that. Walk in the office tomorrow more confident than you have in 6 months for no other reason. I promise people go, whoa, what's up with you? And that feeling that you have, like that emotion, these things, presence with your team, joy with your team, confidence with your team, social contagion, baby. It'll spread. But you got to bring it. You can't wait for your team to give it to you. You can't wait for skills to give it to you. You can't wait for support to give it to you. If we can get you pulling these 3 feelings into your life, we're going to put you on the same deck as high performers. Because as I walked around and had the conversations, they had these things, some of them, but most of them brought it. They generated it. They chose it. They owned it. That's what I'd like you to do. So make sure you write that down. But I really want you to think about this and connect with this. Okay, so with that, how do we know what I'm saying is true? And then we'll jump into the actual habits and how it applies to wealth, your relationships, and the sense of fulfillment and confidence you do have. Before the book came out, these were the numbers where we're at now. Now we're infinitely farther now because the research and the support of many of you taking many of our assessments or tools or doing whatever. But over 250,000 assessments now have gone out. We've partnered with organizations that have over 300,000 employees who gave us access to the performance reviews of their top 15%. I've graduated over 1.6 million students from our own programs, studied what worked for them, what they watch, what questions they have been doing the training, the before and after of our events, all of this stuff. But most importantly, we did those global surveys, those structured one-on-one interviews, those academic literature reviews, those validated assessments. We did all this research, and here's what we found. There's over 100 different performance variables that you can try or do, okay? Now I want you to think about this just for a moment, because you have a lot of your own answers. And today I hope you grasp some of those. So let me ask you this. What makes a difference in your performance? Let me ask it again. What makes a difference in your performance? Think about your work for a moment. Maybe you're an entrepreneur or maybe you work for somebody, but when you're crushing it one week, but you suck the week before, why? Whatever answer you come up with probably fits into what we have measured here, what we call performance variables. These are things that they change or you could do to get a different result, right? That's what we call performance variables in the research, okay? So what is it for you? I would love for you to just take a moment right now with your journal and write it down. Like if you have a crappy week and then you crush it, what is the difference? Take a moment, actually write it down in your journal. Okay, so what's the difference? Why is it sometimes you suck and other times you crush it? Well, we found there's over 100 of those different things. But then here's what we did. We, as part of the research, and this is mostly the first initial phase that I went through personally, I said, well, is this something that they're doing on purpose? That means, is it deliberate? Can I see that they're doing it? Can I change the way that they do it? Is what they are doing something we can train other people? And is it effective whether it's the secretary or the CEO? Okay, this is kind of how you go through the research. And what we did, it boiled down to just 6 habits. 100 different performance variables. Now, truth be told, I think I came down to about 31 habits that I really believed made the difference, that fit into these categories. And why are these categories important? Because we can train you on them. You can get better on them. It's not just like your personality and you're naturally good and perfect. It's not about natural tendencies. It's about what do you deliberately do to keep climbing, baby. Because a lot of people have unbelievable strengths and skills that we're talking about, but they don't deliver. So they came down to these 6 habits. And let me tell you what they weren't, though they are important. They weren't the very common things you heard, right? A lot of personal development, and the difference between my work and other people's is I've always been the next level guy. I'm the advanced guy, okay? Lots of people will tell you, just keep going, work hard, man, be passionate, focus on your strengths, practice a lot, be grateful, stick to it. But if you read the book, the first chapter, we kind of blow through that because we go, there's a lot of people who are very grateful and hardworking, but they're not high performing, they're not making it. There's a lot of people, they do practice and they keep losing. There's a lot of people who are passionate and are persistent. They ain't got no people skills though, so they're not high performing. There's a lot of good people following the good basic advice. And I tell you my story in my book. I did all these things, and you know what? It worked. I got initial success. This is great for initial success, but it's not going to take you over the next mountain. It might get you in the game, might not keep you in the game. And so what we found is high performance is not strongly correlated with how old you are, so don't make that excuse. Because I know, hey, if there's anyone watching this right now and you're above 60 years old, would you give a shout out down below? You don't have to tell us your age if you don't want to, but I'm just curious, how many lifelong students we have on here? How many people who go, because I hope that when I'm, 100 years old, I'm still watching training from people. Because if you get one insight, look, if all you got was tomorrow, you said, you know what, today I'm going to focus on being engaged, I'm going to be joyous, and I'm going to be confident, you will build yourself better. You will be better on the road to greater levels of wealth and abundance and fulfillment in your life from those 3 things. So if you're just here, celebration, you're already doing great. But I wonder how many people are watching this who are lifelong in the mastery. Give them a shout out down below. Celebrate them down below. High performance, look, men and women, equal performers. Problem is, not always equal pay, and that sucks. And we all know there's a gender gap in pay, especially in the Fortune 1000. And so I'm here to be a champion for everybody who's ever been that. Look, performance is also not tied to nationality. It's not tied to your IQ. It's not tied to extroversion or introversion. And that's not just my research. This is literature review, right? Not just strengths, so you don't have a perfect mix of strengths that makes you perfect. It's not tied to creativity. So if you think well, I'm not creative like other people, it's not that. It's not empathy either. Empathy is important, but lots of people are very empathetic, but don't get anything done. It's not tied to your years of experience. There's lots of people who've been doing something for 20 years and they're lazy on their bones. And it's not tied to compensation, meaning how much you get paid. There's lots of people getting paid 30 grand who are out hustling people making 100, right? So as you know those to be truths, I also say this, no excuses, none. So you can't say, well, Brendon, I can't high perform in my life because of this situation. I'm being held back in this way at this particular place. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe right now, but I bet you're going to be alive a long time. Maybe it's time to make a decision to get yourself into a better environment where you can succeed. But ask yourself and be accountable always. Own it. Go, am I bringing my best into this environment despite these suckers? Because I'll tell you, I've had jobs before where I looked around some coworkers, I was like, man, and they would make me feel bad for having higher ambition to do better. And that's a challenge. You might come from a family or a community or cultural background where it's not okay to, really put yourself out there, where it's not okay to celebrate your successes, where it's not okay to become wealthy, where it's not okay to have the ambition that you have. And I'm just here to say this, do not let anybody or any circumstances around you ever limit your ambition, ever. Don't let that happen, because look at the greats. A lot of them came from nothing. And they didn't have support. And they didn't have, a silver spoon in their mouth. And they still made it. They still made it. How? High-performing habits. That's what got them there. That's what takes them to the next level. So don't think it's like if you weren't, imbued with a perfectly creative mind or you don't find yourself, as likable as other people, or you feel like, you take your Myers-Briggs and look, Myers-Briggs is not correlated with long-term high performance. It's just not. Personality isn't. Even in deep psychological studies, and you do lots of work in psychology, and I know we got a lot of psychologists here, so give a shout out, test the book, run it through me, and ask that. And you know that even in the big 5 personality traits measured in academic sciences for psychology, and those typically are like, whether or not your levels of openness, let's say, your levels of conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism, that kind of thing, those big 5. The only one that really has a good correlation over the long term is conscientiousness. But here's the deal. Even that one isn't that particularly impressive in its strong correlations in lots of different domains, meaning across people's domains. It's very important, by the way. And by the way, anybody could say something is correlated with something, right? I challenge my own research because you know what we also found strongly correlated with success? I don't know, people who took showers. People who eat food. Wow. I mean, look, we could say people who wear shoes succeed. I mean, we could make there's no doubt that you can bend the science towards whatever, and a lot of psychologists do that, unfortunately. We did a pretty good discipline here in the research. But I will share with you, I don't think I have all the answers either. What we found is the research suggests these things, and there are strong correlations. But what we definitely found is you cannot blame where you are from. You cannot do that, because we had people who had no money, and they're crushing it. And I bet there's people right now, like you were the first one in your family. How many of you were the first ones in your family to really succeed? I mean, really do it. Just type down below, just go, first one. I'm curious. All the people watching right now, were you the first one? You didn't have a lot of things. Maybe you had, a very challenging upbringing just like your siblings, but you crushed through for some reason. Why? It's not because you were better than, or your personality was perfect than somebody else. It was, I bet, the high-performing habits that we'll talk about. So why am I saying this? I want you to write this one down. No excuses. Maybe you'll take a moment and pause me at some point, whether it's on the replay or now, and just write at the top of your journal, my old excuses. And write down everything you've been allowing yourself to think or feel or do to hold you back. The old excuses, right? Well, I'm not happy because my spouse. Your spouse, I know, can significantly shape your happiness, but you got to own your own happiness, right? Look at all the things in the world that can make us unhappy right now. I mean, look at all of them. And look at how easily and almost in some ways, and forgive the language because I don't like this language, but I think it's important to be abrupt with this particular one. Look how pathetic some members of our society are being right now in blaming everything else and being pathetically pulled into the negative karma and the negative energy, right? I do. I think of that, and if you don't like that word, I'm taking it from like even a perspective. Do you remember Winnie the Pooh? You remember Winnie the Pooh? He had those 2 little friends. He had, one of them was like Piglet, the pink one, and he had the other one. What was it? What was it? It was a donkey, right? Remember Eeyore? You remember Eeyore? Was that a little pathetic little dude? He was a pathetic little dude. I don't know if you don't like that language, but he was a pathetic little donkey, okay? And some people, they are being pathetic like that because they say, it's the news. It's got me so down. I'm like, the news? You're an adult and you're letting the news get you down? It's the people at work. The people at work, and you're over the age of 18 and you're blaming them for your attitude? I just say, look, conscious adults, it's on us to be self-aware and to own our own feelings and emotions at some point. We can't keep being Eeyore. Did I get the name right? It's Eeyore, right? Yep. The pathetic donkey. Yep. Yes, okay, I said it, okay. If you need a little, if you like to use a metaphor like that, by the way, make sure you go read a book called The Tao of Pooh. T-A-O, the Tao, T-A-O, the Tao of Pooh, P-O-O-H. Okay, no jokes in the chat roll, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. but it's written by Benjamin Hoff, and it's a book about Eastern philosophy, Taoism, brought into, then told through the story of Winnie the Pooh, and how Winnie the Pooh doesn't get ruffled and why he doesn't get ruffled, but why everyone else around him does. And it's a beautiful book, and it's a beautiful metaphor for this reality that maybe we shouldn't be blaming everything, you know? I think we have entered an area where it's so easy to blame that. Oh, you know what, Brendon, my generation, we're being looked at this way and that way. No, you're not, okay? Anytime someone says a whole generation is anything, they're operating from a place of ignorance and judgment that just should not be done. So apologies for any of you out there who try to teach generational training. I'm cool with where you're trying to come from there. It just inevitably, if you're responsible, you can admit you're inaccurate. No one can speak for a generation. No one can say, well, the millennials are like this and the greatest generation was like that, because inevitably it's inaccurate. There's too much variability in both performance, too much variability in both personality, too much variability in income, too much variability in lifespan, too much variability in lifestyle to ever competently say one generation is like this. If you hear someone doing that, I usually say, you might listen, you might pick up a tidbit of a generic statement. Just beware of being judgmental. Because right now we're in a place, and why am I bringing this up? Because I promised to talk to you guys about business and career as well. And right now, in a lot of businesses right now, multiple generations are being discriminated against in how they're treated. That, you know, millennials might be being talked down to, and those who are at the upper level, who have years and years and some gray hairs, they might be being talked down to as well. It's like, look, we all need to give a little bit more respect and patience and credit to the people that we work with and we serve with. They have long days. They got families. They got other competing priorities. They might not have as much equal skill and training. Everybody's different. So don't make a general statement. And I think it's really important too, because we see that with nationality, we see that with where people come from and ethnicity, that there's a lot of discrimination and ignorance still today. And you know, I'm blessed to travel around a lot, and I'm blessed to have literally at our events, we have people coming from 40 countries around the world, every age, race, possible background. And it always inspires me that so many people are striving to be their best, no matter where they come from. So I would just say to you, if you want to go to another level in your career, make sure that you are meeting the people at work and giving a great amount of respect to others and appreciation to others, no matter what you think of them. Because you cannot count out that 70-year-old white dude, and you can't count out that 23-year-old fresh face who still hasn't learned to iron a shirt, okay? You can't do it. You're going to be wrong. I mean, I'm blessed to coach and work with some of maybe the most extraordinary people on the planet. I got a client, we tell his story in the book, from Silicon Valley. I mean, he's moving the needle of the world. And, you know, young guy. And everybody, you know, discounted this person at some point. They were wrong. So don't discount based on these. I know this might be like, yeah, I get it, Brendon. But your next level of performance is going to come from the way in which you engage the people around you. And if you are judging them quickly, you're in trouble. That's all I'm here to say, because you probably can't guess their performance. Next up, I want to address one big elephant in the room, and that is about strengths. There is a very big issue that we have been bought and sold about the strengths. And I say this with respect because strengths are a good thing. Like, I love to do things I'm strong at. It's great. But I also know that my strengths are not sufficient for me to go to a new level too. They're part of the equation, but they're not all the equation. Because here's what we found. High performers do not report working on their strengths any more than other people do. Let me say that again. We all, again, that cart before the horse thing, we think, oh, they're working only on their strengths and that's where they're high performing. That is not true. There are plenty of people who are working a little outside of their confidence or comfort or competency zone, and they're high performing, okay? You don't have to have this perfect mix, because you know what? I know a lot of people who took the Strengths Finder and they scored really high and they feel good about themselves and they can't do crap. Okay? I know you do too, right? If you're in an organization that they rolled out the Strengths Finder, you saw it probably didn't do what you were promised. And so I think it's a feel-good attitude, and it's better than just bemoaning our weaknesses, but our strengths are insufficient. And here's the thing, it doesn't matter anyway. And I know that sounds flippant, but high performers, they're not like, what am I strong at? What am I perfect at? Let me just do that. We want to do that. That's very Instagram worldy. High performers are saying, who am I and what am I? They're not saying as much, who am I and what am I good at? Though they know those answers. Listen, listen to me. Self-awareness is high. Who am I and what I'm good at? They score high on that. But the question of operation for the day isn't usually in the morning like, who am I? What am I good at? And I'm only going to do what I'm good at today, baby. They're asking a different kind of question. Boy, that's going to be a meme somewhere. I shouldn't have done that movement. They're going to say, what is required to be of service here? And how can I grow into that and lead others to deliver exceptional service? Let me say that again. What's required to be of service here? Right? What is required? Video communication was not my strength. I was terrible at it. I knew it was required to be of service in my industry, so I developed the skill. Same with public speaking, terrified. Look, I don't have any notes in front of me right now. I'm not reading a script. I'm looking at the same thing you are. And I've been doing this whole thing extemporaneous. I did not have any skill for that. Where I came from, men didn't really communicate more than like 6 sentences in a row, unless all those sentences were like one word starting with the F, and each had a period. So I didn't grow up with an incredible articulate group of people around me, okay? And I'm not judging that, because I wasn't either. So it's not about, like, I was naturally skilled at this. It was, listen, I identified the primary skills that were important to my career, and I went and mastered them, regardless if I had any affinity or strengths in that area. Let me say it again. I identified the skills that were necessary in my industry, and I went and mastered them, regardless if I was good or regardless if I liked it. Believe me, the first time I sat down to code a web page, I was like hating it. I was like, I don't even think like this. I looked at the web page just like everybody else. I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't even know what this button does. And I was constantly terrified I was going to crash. Something I was like, I'm not a technology thinker. My brain was not like that. And that was my excuse. My brain was not like that. Because I also came up during another myth time. We're in myth time right now, that all you need is your strengths. There was another myth time, and that myth time was left brain versus right brain. And it was just because neuroscience was pretty old, but very definitively, you do not have a modus operandi of left brain versus right brain thinking. If you still think that, I would love to encourage you to check out the neuroscience of the last 2 or 3 years. Your brain is not just left-right hemisphere and left-right thinking. That's not how the brain is like an intricate spider web of everything connected. And there are things that we think that we're only, zeroed in on the left hemisphere that also come to the right. The history of where that comes from is because the visual cortex and how we use our hands was very much tied towards left and right hemisphere stuff. Same thing with the visual cortex. But the issue here is that I used to say, well, I'm just not right brain thinker. I used to say that. I'm just not a right brainer. I literally said that. I'm just not a right brainer. Because back then, it was popular to say right brain versus left brain. Now we know that's a completely absurd connotation. It's a convenient metaphor. It's just not accurate. And so I encourage you to check out some recent site in the last couple of years that has come out that just completely debunked that entire idea. What we do need to know is, okay, do we know how to tell stories? That's a skill we can develop, no matter how your brain is built, okay? Can you be more thoughtful about your work? Sure. And some people say, well, Brendon, you don't understand. Some people are just built to be more creative. Creative is an innate strength. Well, sure, we could argue that almost anything is an innate strength. If you're good at it, everyone could say, well, you're just born that way. People say to me, Brendon, you were just born writing books, right? I'm like, what? you know? And just like some things I am good at, like naturally good at, like racquetball. Naturally, I don't know why I'm good at racquetball. I'm better at racquetball walking on a court than I should be based on how much I do it. But I also get my butt handed to me. Is that a phrase? Butt handed to me? Yeah? Okay, it sounds a little odd when you actually say it out loud. So I get my butt handed to me on the racquetball court by people who've just done it more than I have, right? And so it's not about natural talent and the talent myths. And it's important to say that. So I would love for you to write this sentence down if you haven't already. What is required to be of service here? And how can I grow into that or lead others to deliver service? What if you walked into your business every day and you asked that question? What happened if you walked into work tomorrow and you said, what's required to be of service here today? And how can I grow into the person who can do that service better or develop my team to develop that better? Instead of going into work and going, well, what's going to happen today? I better check my inbox. What are they going to do? And I know I'm being a little bit facetious here, but I hope you get the idea. High performers aren't focused just on what they're good at. They're focused on what is required. Nobody is naturally good at the top levels. They got there. They disciplined themselves. They worked harder than everybody else. Even if they had some luck of genetic to be bigger, stronger, faster, or have some other mental capability. There's lots of people with high IQ who don't do anything. There's lots of really tall, strong, powerful people who don't play in the stereotypical NBA. I mean, it's about the hard work to be there and the high performance we'll talk about. Okay, so here's what we found. We found that high performance habits ultimately fall into two camps. There's the personal habits and there's the social habits, and they interact, okay? They interact. And as I go through each of them, I'll be talking about your wealth, following your dream, and taking on some of those promises about which dreams to chase, etc., that I talked about at the top of the hour. But here's the thing, I didn't go looking for this. It wasn't until I was almost done writing the first section of the book that I kind of realized, oh, these conveniently kind of fit into this framework, but I didn't start the research to be like, oh, I wonder what they personally do and how they interact with people. That wasn't the very beginning of the research. It just turned out that way. And here's what we found. In the personal habits, there's 3 of them. Number 1 is seeking clarity. I don't know why I'm doing that. Seek clarity. And this is so basic, and it will fundamentally change your life when you start doing it better. High performers more consistently seek clarity about who they are, how they want to interact with people, and what feeling and meaning they will draw from their work than other people. My favorite example is most people bumble into the next meeting, and that's why they're no good at work. They just keep bumbling into the next situation, bumbling in, because when you're good, you can kind of just bumble around, right? You can just pop over here, show up over there, do good over here. But high performers are more deliberate. Right before they go in the meeting, they sit and they seek clarity. They go, okay, meeting's coming up. Who do I want to be in that meeting? How do I want to treat people in that meeting? What's the feeling I want to generate in that meeting? What's the meaning I want to draw from being here in that meeting? And that might sound overly constructed, and in some ways it is, but almost always when I did the interviews, I found out that they were asking questions more often than other people in those categories of who they are, how they treat people, the feeling they want to create, and the meaning they want to draw from it. That's the things I found over and over and over in the book. And specifically, that high performers, this was a big finding that also a lot of literature review finds this in Success, and that is high performers are future-oriented. They are more consistent than other people considering their future. Because a lot of people, they go through the whole year and they don't think about their future until New Year's Eve or when their birthday hits, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Then they start really getting... High performers have a very consistent thought process about the future, about who they're going to be in the future, where they're going to be, how they're going to treat people, what they're going to achieve, what's going to be fulfilling to them. And they're asking of themselves more often. I think it's one of the reasons we found that they tend to be more dedicated to their personal growth than other people, is because they're really interested in that. I think that's very hopeful, that what if you just create a simple, like maybe create an index card? If you got the book, in this chapter, there's something called the clarity chart. And if you did not know it, you can go get it and download it. I'll just give it to you guys right here. Go to highperformancehabits.com/tools. If you check me on that team, I think that's what it is. highperformancehabits.com/tools. You can download the clarity chart so you can print it out and actually fill it out. You can do it in the book too, but if you guys want to do that, highperformancehabits.com/tools, and you'll see the clarity chart there. Download it. Check it out. There's a bunch of other tools. Yeah, there's a bunch of other performance prompts on that page. Like all the questions that I ask you in this book for the performance prompts, you can download them at that website too. It's free for you guys, right? And those tools and that approach to asking those questions will really help you over the long term to get more focused, okay? The second big thing, I know, something gone. Generating energy, huge, okay? To generate energy is so important. And to generate a little energy with you guys, I'm gonna do some Q&A here. I'm gonna come back and talk about how do you apply this in your life so you feel more fulfilled, but you also start crushing at work. Because you know what? Your next level of wealth comes from your next level of energy. Let me say it again. Your next level of wealth comes from your next level of energy. And some people might not like when I say that, but we figured out how to codify and actually measure energy, and we define that as mental, emotional, and physical energy or vibrancy. And guess what, my friends? Yeah, your energy scores are correlated with your income. Your energy scores are deeply connected to your productivity levels, which I know you know already. So my question for you is, do you want to crush it? Get more energy. You want to crush it? Generate more energy. And it's really important. But the first thing to do when you're installing these habits, and this is important for everybody, the most critical thing in performance improvement for you is going to learn to start measuring yourself on a consistent basis in the categories you want to succeed in. Let me give you an example. Lots of dudes go, Brendon, I want to be a better husband. And then I'll talk to him 3 months later. I'm like, how's it going being a better husband? I try here and there, and she doesn't listen. I'm like, what? Look, being a better husband is not about trying here and there and only doing it if she responds well. You need to own it, and this is not Steve's example, I'm talking about in general for the gentleman, or any spouse, honestly, is that if you want to be better with your partner or your lover, you can't just say, I want to do it and walk into each week hopeful for it. What you need to do is set up a set of cues, triggers, and evaluative practices where you score yourself. And when you score yourself, I'll just do this 1 to 10 strategy. 1, you're sucking. 10, you're amazing. Okay? And then when you score yourself, and you should do it at least twice a week, in whatever area you're really trying to improve, score yourself twice a week. I remember when I was trying to be more productive as a person, I said, you know what, I'm not as productive as I know I could be. And I kept thinking, well, I'll do this hack or I'll download this thing or whatever, and I never got more productive. You know how I got more productive? I put it on my sheet for Wednesday and for Sunday to score myself on productivity that week. 1, I sucked. 10, super productive. And here's what the nice thing about that is. When you score yourself, and you do this over a period of time, you start to see, ooh, I'm scoring low right here. And when you score yourself, let's say you give yourself a 5, and you know you should be an 8. Then you get that benefit asking a question, which seeks clarity, saying, how could I be more productive right now? How could I go from a 5 to a 10? Like, what would I have to do? Same thing with being a better husband. Okay, this week, how am I doing as a husband? I'm a 4, want to be a 10. What would it take to go from a 4 to a 10? You know what? Let me bring home some flowers. You know what? Let me listen a little bit better. You know what? Let me straighten up a little bit here. You know what? Let me stop screaming at the kids because that freaks everybody. You got to figure out your thing, man. But it only happens from scoring. So let me suggest a simple thing to help you, Steve, tactically get out of frustration more often. Very simple. And that is, I want you to read the chapter on energy, since we're there. And the first practice of this, you'll love it, is called release tension, set intention. Frustration is usually built across the day. One little thing upsets us, then another thing upsets us. We didn't let those go. A third thing stacks on it. Then a fourth thing stacks on us. And then throughout the day, we're picking up more frustration. And at the end of the day, we're so frustrated we can't do anything. And so we don't want to do our good practices, take care of our health, or be thoughtful. And so here's what I want you to think about. I would love for you to do whatever, if you're in between activities, let's say you do your email, now you're going to do a PowerPoint presentation, pull away from the email, close your eyes, repeat the word release to yourself, just for 3 minutes. Just repeat, release, release, like a mantra. Release, release, release. At the end, when you feel like the tension, because your goal in that is to release tension in the body, release thoughts in the mind. Release thoughts in the mind, release tension in the body. That's the word release is your cue. Then after you feel like that, a little bit of tension release, ask, what's my intention now for who I'm going to be and what I'm going to focus on in this next activity? And that little pause between things throughout the day will start be like releasing baggage throughout the day, releasing energetic negativity that's been built up on to you. And here's the thing, you might say, well, Brendon, that's not good enough because I'm frustrated about everything. I'm frustrated about my health, and I'm frustrated about my career, and I'm frustrated about my marriage. And people who are frustrated, they make that frustration big, but it's easy to get really frustrated and globalize frustration. I'm frustrated with everything, right? Don't do that. Realize that frustration is being built up throughout the day. Take back control of your life by taking back all those little micro moments between your activities to release the tension. And if you start doing that, and you are releasing the tension, stepping into the next moment with some intention, what you're going to start to find, I promise you, is less frustration in the body. And when you have less frustration in the body, your mind will operate at a better level. Let me move on through the rest of this. I'm going to orient this next section especially to wealth, business, career stuff, because I think we're all on the same page now, and hopefully I've got you rattling and thinking about this stuff. Social habits. Number one, increase productivity. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to start this week. Today is Wednesday, as I'm filming this. So what I want you to do is I want you to score yourself tonight on your productivity, okay? 1, you were terribly ineffective the last 7 days of your life. 10, you were incredibly effective the last 7 days of your life. And I want you to know why. Why do you have that number, okay? And what I would love for you to do, especially if you're a business owner or a solopreneur, entrepreneurs, listen, you need to start scoring yourself on productivity every week. It needs to be part of your life. And I mean this genuinely. You cannot keep waiting until your performance review or quarterly numbers, end of the launch, end of life. Like, one thing that really moved the needle for me was understanding that high performers, they're really measuring themselves on productivity. Specifically, they're asking if they have created what we call PQO, prolific quality output, in the areas that matter. All right? Is what you are being judged on, either in your job or in the marketplace, are you putting it out there? You know? Look at the most followed people in the world. They are consistent, man. Look at the most extraordinary people in any career. Consistent. Why? Because they have set up their lives, so that consistency must take place. They measure themselves on that, or maybe they're compensating themselves on that, or they do it with their team reviews. But I'm telling you what, this one cannot be an intention. Let me say that again. This cannot be an intention. You cannot just say, I'm going to be more productive. I'm going to be more productive. I'm thinking productivity. I'm attracting productivity-ness into my body. This is not going to work for you, okay? Productivity cannot be an intention. Increasing productivity must be an implementation of a scorecard for you. It is the only way. And if you're in corporate America, you know this if you've ever done any level of human performance or organizational development. No scorecard, no growth, right? We have to measure ourselves. And I know I have so many entrepreneurs watching this because of the time of the day right now. So it is necessary. It is really necessary for you to score yourself specifically on productivity. And here's the question I want you to ask. Did I produce the outputs that really mattered in the last 7 days? And it is a yes or no. And if it is a no, the question is why? What would I have to do to be able to re-aim my focus to create the things that matter the most now? I'll give you an example this morning. I've got a seminar coming up, and all of the printing is due. And it's obviously really important to get the guidebooks and the brochures and all the other stuff out that if you've ever been to our events, you know you get a lot of stuff. Well, I got to create that weeks in advance. And the issue is we've got this book launch going on that took attention away from me getting the printing done. So this morning, I had to say, what's the most important output by the end of this day? And you know what? It wasn't the printing. Even though that deadline's right here, I had to look at what are the outputs that matter the most today to keep me on track in the bigger mission. And I had to literally text my team. I said, when is the last drop dead moment we can get that? And they scrambled to find another printer that was even closer and more flexible so that I could have an extra couple days. Even though this one printer said it has to be done tonight, I had to question that to say, what is most important to create right now to keep me on track to the overall mission? And some other things superseded that. That happened this morning. And I say that because too many people, they don't do the analysis in the morning. What they do is they get up, they bumble into their day, then they react to everybody on email, then they do the things that they put in their calendar week 3, 7 weeks ago. I want you every morning to do a performance analysis of what you have planned that day and go, is what's on my calendar today really necessary for today? Is what is on my calendar really going to help me achieve more prolific quality output in my field of endeavor? And if the answer is no, my friends, stop, cancel it, break the meeting, don't do the thing, move the deadline. But I am here to say, you need to do that every morning. Look, if all I could get you to do is 3 simple things. Every morning, do a performance analysis of what's coming up that day. What is necessary, and what is the quality output you're looking towards, and is it happening today? What really matters the most today? And start clearing the decks. Second thing, don't check your email in the first 60 minutes of the day. Just don't, okay? If you stop checking your email in the first 60 minutes of the day, and now that includes direct messages and texts and everything else that we're bombarded with on social media, stop. Spend the 60 minutes of your day thinking, planning, preparing, readying your body, having a discussion, even if it has to be with the team, for what the day should be about versus reacting. Do not allow reactivity to happen in that first hour of your day, because it will, for most people, it derails hours of their day. And we know this from productivity science because we can see that those who are interrupted tend to move on. Listen to this. If you're at your work and you get interrupted, what tends to happen is that you will go and you will do 2 distracted activities before you get back to the main thing that you should have had kept as the main thing. So that's the science. It's usually 2 for 1. It's I get interrupted, and when I get interrupted, now I'm going to go back to my computer, do 2 dumb, stupid things that don't matter before I return to the very thing that I was working on before I was interrupted. So you really need to be careful of reactivity and interruptions in that first hour of your day especially. And then the third thing I want you to do, remember, gauge yourself. I want you to gauge yourself Wednesday night and Sunday night on the productivity that you have had that week on a scale of 1 to 10. Score yourself. Keep it in a journal. Write down the numbers. Okay? We have a journal coming out. Should be out for the holidays. A full high performance type program that has lots of cool stuff in it. But you can do it in your own journal. Score yourself 1 to 10 every single week. Okay, I need to move on, I know. Develop influence. This is really important. I want you to do a strategy session tonight. And I want you to sit down and I want you to say, what would make me more influential in my career right now so that in 1 year from now, I'm doubling my output? Ask this question again. What would make me more influential in my career right now so that in a year from now, I am doubling my output? Let me give an example. If I say, okay, I'll take a financial area because it makes it easier for people. Let's call it, if I'm selling X number of products right now, okay? Let's say I'm selling 1,000 products a day, okay? If in a year from now, I'm gonna have 2,000 products sold a day, what kind of influence would I have to gain to make that happen? Now that influence for me, that could be hiring somebody who's extraordinary. That could be elevating my brand and my messaging in the marketplace. That could be influence of me getting around bigger influencers who might give me access to their audience. It could be me doing more interviews. It could be getting better affiliates. It could be me learning for me to develop, communicate with better excellence so I have more influence. I don't know what it is, but I need to figure that out. Most people have not tied their influence to their outputs. And that's why they're struggling. They're just trying to bang their head against the wall more often. And that's not helping them. What you need to do is think, how could you be more influential? Because isn't it true if you became more influential, things might get easier? Isn't it true if you became more influential, you could inspire your tribe to help you more? Isn't it true if you became more influential, you could get people to believe in you, buy from you, support you more? That's why I think this chapter is so important and this work is so unique. The reason high performance studies is so unique is we are not studying individual differences only correlated and related to initial success. Because I'm telling you, too many psychologists who now want to get into training and who now want to be out there speaking, they have not studied the history of personal development enough. And their mistake, a lot of professionals do this, psychologists, psychiatrists, professionals will often say, or especially academics, they'll say, oh, those stupid self-help people, they're just making stuff up. No, they're relying on over 100 years of things that have been put out there that we know. I'll give you an example. Grit with Angela Duckworth, who's unbelievable, by the way, and I love that book and love Angela's work, and everything that's coming out of University of Pennsylvania is so important right now. But most of that is lagging behind about 40 years from the personal development and self-help market. They've already been talking about it. And a mistake that happens often is that a psychologist doesn't walk across the hallway to the sociologist and talk with them. And so you have things that perpetuate in the academic circles that are not sometimes as well thought out in the general marketplace. They're good in their one place, but not, for example, communicating to people that success is really tied to grit, passion, and perseverance is a dramatic mistake that any person in personal development or organizational development could tell you 30 years ago. Why? Because passion, perseverance, while important individual differences, when organizational development people talk about how does it work in the field, they realize if you had all the passion in the world and all the perseverance, but you lacked people skills, the ability to influence others positively, you'd be dead in the water. Meaning, Tom Brady is not Tom Brady just because he's passionate and perseverant. He's also Tom Brady because he's a leader, because he's got extraordinary people skills with his team. Because think about how many passionate and persevering people who also do a lot of practice ruined their relationships with their coaches or their teammates, and now they're not star athletes anymore. We have to have influence in the conversation with high performance, and our reports and our work and research and all of my empirical work proves it. You cannot just look at individual differences. Why does this matter? Because you need to relook at the relationships you have at work and in your industries, and you need to ask, how can I develop more influence at work? How can I develop a better relationship with everybody at work? And it's not just going to be because you're happier and more passionate. And it's not going to be just because you work harder and you persevere through resilient all the time. Those are important. Believe me, those are important. But if you don't start working on your network, you will not grow your net worth. Remember that one? That's 50 years old too. You need to develop that network, and you need to develop the nodes in that network with deeper, more meaningful relationships. And anyone who talks to you about success, who does not talk about influence, I just say, run. Because that person has not even done the casual observations. It is more important for you to realize your next level is tied to your next level of influence with your family, with your friends, with the people you serve and sell to. I really need you to connect to that idea. It's everything to your business success now, okay? You need to gauge more influence. See what the influencers are doing, model that, but ask, how could you drive so much value and positivity into other people's lives, regardless of your strength or regardless of what you're passionate about? Because that's what we think. Well, I can only add value where I'm passionate. I'm like, what? No, you add value by solving problems. Sometimes those problems aren't correlated with your strengths or your personality. Sometimes those have nothing to do with what you're even capable of. A lot of the things I've done over my career to help people, I didn't know how to do it yet. I had to get in the mix and train myself because I knew if I could solve that problem, I could develop influence. If I could develop influence, I could solve bigger problems. If I could solve bigger problems and develop more influence, I might be able to move the needle of the world a little bit. People ask all the time, how do you have so many followers, Brendon? It's not because of my passion, and it's not just because of perseverance. It's because I cared about developing the skills of influence. How do you do it? In the book, we talk a lot about your necessity of shaping people's thoughts. Your ability to direct the conversation so that people are discovering what they think and that you're shaping their thoughts as well. And also challenging people. For most of you watching right now, one of the things that's going to bring you back to life, we're talking about vibrancy, aliveness, fulfillment, is challenging yourself, but also challenging other people. You want to feel more fulfilled in your family life? Challenge your family to rise. That's hard to say, and I get it. Some of you are like, oh my God, if I challenge my family, I know. But maybe you challenge them by just being the role model. But if you want any given situation you're in to improve, challenge people. And I know that might sound esoteric, but look at the best marketers in the world. What do? They do 30-day challenges. Why are they always doing challenges? Because they work. Because when you engage people and you push them, they want to be part of your tribe. So how are you pushing people? Are you leading the way? Are you really challenging the people around you to rise to other levels of excellence? Or are you just letting them go through the motions? And it's easier to let people go through the motions than develop influence. And that's why we also must, demonstrate courage. When we demonstrate and develop courage internally, that means we speak up for ourselves and other people more consistently and more constantly. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask this simple question. How could you, what level of courage would you have to have? What would you have to go for? What would you have to go for to double your wealth? What level of courage would you have to double your wealth? What level of courage would you have to double your happiness in life? Right now, we can just choose in the moment to be happy. But how would you have to start showing up? What's beyond your comfort zone that's going to bring the accolades, the appreciation, the reward? Because there's something there. There's something. If you will challenge yourself to be a little more courageous, a little more bold, to speak up for yourself and other people a little bit more, to take more confident and trusting steps into the unknown, I promise you, you will shift the results you're getting. A lot of people, they talk about courage and they talk about it in a very, I would say, bland and weak way because they think courage is only tied to vulnerability. And if I'm just being vulnerable, I'm being courage. I'm like, now you're baseline human. Now let's go to another level. Let's knock you the crap out of your comfort zone. And now let's talk about courage. Because I think it's gotten too much, oh, she posted a post about herself, how courageous. I'm like, really? 1 billion people posted something today. I think we've knocked courageous down from the place it should be. I think, yes, can we have everyday actions of courage? Absolutely. But we've got into such a, airy-fairy approach to courage that most people aren't really bellying up the counter of life and going, you know what? Serve me a big drink of hardship. Let's go. And that's why they're struggling so much. They're just like, oh, well, courage for me is, just being vulnerable and just showing people what I really, And they get this look on their face and I'm like, oh my God, okay, great job. And that's wonderful for everything that you're doing in yoga class. Keep doing that. And it's great for spiritual development. No problem with vulnerability. But vulnerability is first-tier courage. I want you to challenge yourself. What are you going to do to knock yourself out of your comfort zone in the areas that matter to you most? That means for your family, right? If you really wanted to improve your relationship with somebody, what would real courage look like? What would it really look like? If you really wanted to advance the quality of your life, what would courage really look like for you? Because I promise it wouldn't just be that first step. And that first step, by the way, I honor that and I celebrate that. But we have gotten a little bit wimpy in this approach. And people don't like when I say that, but it's true. It's become too much of an academic conversation about courage without enough of the reality of what it takes. And I say that because I'm a practitioner, not an academic. I appreciate the people who are writing about courage and they live in their beautiful suburb and they've never actually had to coach hundreds of people to another level of performance before. And they're talking about what they think changes people's lives or they read in their literature review. And I respect all of that. But I also challenge them to get the crap out of their own internal thinking about what courage is and go start coaching people. Like put your butt on the line with your money where it is important where you get paid if you get a result with them or you don't. Because it's that level of practitioner who will say to you, Brendon's right. And if I sound wrong to you or you don't like that idea, I honor that because that's your perspective. But my perspective is being in the field. My perspective is I get paid to get the transformation. And if I don't get paid. And what have I learned in that process? That courage is a real thing. It is not just once in a while. It's going. There are leaps. There is boldness there that sometimes truly frighten people. I mean, they put their backs against the wall. They burned the boats. They went all in and they were worried and they were scared and the anxiety was there and they stepped into it anyway. That is something I deeply respect. And that's something that is required of you to really break through, whether you think it's breaking through a glass ceiling or breaking through the next level of wealth or breaking through whatever it is for you. I'm telling you, go for it. Like really think about what that means for you. Now, I'm very honoring in the book, and I hope that it comes across that I appreciate all the different levels of conversation we could have about that. In fact, I start this chapter of Developing Courage admitting I was wrong, and that I had a client situation. I didn't think she was being courageous enough, but what she did do turned out to be really courageous. I judged it too soon, and I was wrong. So I'm not here saying I got all the answers. I was wrong. But I also know that what got her the ultimate transformation was a very bold move in her life. And I think you need to make that in your life to go to the next level of wealth, of productivity, of joy, of fulfillment. Because nobody at the end of their life wants to get to the end of their life and go, you know what? I only lived completely within the safety of my preferences. I lived a life that was just, all I ever tried to do was the easy stuff. I never tried to do anything that pushed me. No one wants to say that at the end. So start pushing, start going. If you've ever chosen a year to be bold and courageous, make it this year, because I know from the numbers and the data and the research, but more importantly, years, 10 years at the top of high performance training in the world and getting the results for people, courage, gotta have it. I hope this has served you. I know I went a little bit long in all these topics, but I was trying to give you a different perspective on it. I've covered as much as I can in our time today, and I went a little bit over, so I hope you enjoyed it. I got nothing to sell and nothing to say other than this. Thank you for your support of High Performance Habits. Please do the work in the book, put it into practice. Please know this, with deep motivation in your heart, and the right high performance habits, you can become more extraordinary at what you do. So every day of your life, read a little bit of high performance habits to get you back in that mindset if you need to do that. And as always, make sure, go out there every single day, live fully, love openly, and go make a difference today. Thank you again for all of your support. I'll talk to you all soon. This can be your day for personal growth. This can be that day you committed to and you remember and you go, that was the day I got myself a community. I got better coaches. I committed to making my life the absolute best that I could. This is that day. Make today your growth day. Click the button on this page and sign up right now.